We're back to school, but are we back to normal?
This is another one of those scary stats.
It's been 5 years since the pandemic.
Socially, emotionally, developmentally, I think we're always going to see a 2-year hit on every kid that went through COVID.
And this school year looks a lot different than it did in 2020.
A lot of kids got disinterested in school during COVID.
It's not because students are back in the classroom. Education has changed.
We're seeing double the amount of homeschoolers post-pandemic as pre-pandemic.
From a huge uptick in homeschooling to budget issues exacerbated by declining enrollment. Tonight, K2's on your side, taking a closer look at the issues, the data, and some possible solutions.
I believe that it is in the best interest of our students to put the cell phones aside from bell to bell during the classroom day.
How schools are navigating a new world of new technology and new problems 5 years after COVID.
Is there a propensity to cheat with AI?
It does happen. And what we recommend to our teachers is know your students.
Project Education Back to School starts now. Thank you for joining us for the special edition of K2 News. I'm Deborah Knapp. Tonight we're digging into how things have changed in and out of classrooms across Oregon and Southwest Washington over the past 5 years. We're back to school, but are we back to normal since the start of the pandemic? Over the next half hour, we'll look at the problems plaguing schools and the possible solutions. First, the overall impact of the pandemic, from enrollment to budgets and test scores. Now that it's been a handful of years, it's time to reflect on the impact COVID has had on education. I sat down with neuroscientist Jared Horvath recently to see if we're bouncing back. It's 2025, kids are going back to school. How far are we from back to normal?
This is another one of those scary stats. Socially, emotionally, developmentally, I think we're always going to see a 2-year hit on every kid that went through COVID. If you have an 8th grade, if you're a teacher of 8th grade, your kids will act like they're in 6th grade. And we've never really seen that kind of catch up yet. But when it comes to academically, every country in the world is back to normal, except for the US. We're the one country that hasn't regained COVID learning losses. And there's a big debate now about why that's going on. And we think the best explanation we have is that we're still using it as an excuse.
The ripples caused by COVID are now turning into waves, affecting nearly every corner of schools. Fewer kids are walking the halls and sitting in desks in Oregon classrooms. According to the Oregon Department of Education, Oregon lost more than 37,000 students in public education from 2019 to this past school year. That's a more than 6% decrease. But as enrollment fades, the budget for the Oregon Department of Education has ballooned by 38%. In 2020, the state spent $13,300 per student. Today, it's $18,440. Sarah Pope is an education advocate and the executive director of Stand for Children.
When it comes to reading, when it comes to math, when it comes to attendance, we're in the bottom, and in some cases with reading and math, we're last.
There are significant gaps in academic scores. As of 2024, statewide test scores in English, math, and science are below pre-COVID levels by 10%. Attendance is also down. Chronic absenteeism is when a child misses more than 10% of school days in a given academic year. Oregon State Senator Suzanne Weber is a former educator and drafted legislation to address chronic absenteeism.
We saw some incidents of this before COVID. But then COVID just exacerbated all of these situations and made it so that it just wasn't totally necessary to have to be in school.
Within the state's 10 largest districts, chronic absenteeism rates range from 33 to 48%. That far exceeds the national average of 26%. Lisa Kenzel is the former state PTA president.
A lot of kids got disinterested in school during COVID. They kind of just pulled back and didn't want to participate. Virtual learning is hard for a lot of kids. So I think we saw some increases in absenteeism because of that. It hasn't improved though. We have about 38% of our students here in Oregon that are chronically absent.
Another shift has to do with student tools. Before the pandemic, technology was more of an enhancement. Now it's a necessity. Classroom tech has become just as important as pencil and paper for school. Students may have strengthened their tech-savvy skills, but according to neuroscientist Jared Horvath, lost others.
Absolutely. Before COVID, around 70% of districts in the U.S. had one-to-one programs, so they were tech-heavy. After COVID, it's now 98%. I think what happened was COVID forced everyone to use tech, and once we used it, we brought it right back into schools. Instead of saying, cool, let's go back to what we were doing before, we just said, well, we're used to it, let's keep doing it. And we weren't used to it. No one was doing it very well. The dropout rate and lack of engagement rate during COVID was extreme. But we just kept doing it anyway because it was there. And so I think we're still cycling those lessons from COVID, and now we're finally getting to the wall where people are saying, wait, what's wrong with our kids?
Adding to the funding challenges, many point to the end of the pandemic era relief as part of the hardship. Districts relied on elementary and secondary school emergency relief, but that tapped out in 2024. And without that funding, many districts were forced to cut after-school programs and support services.
When COVID happened, and at that point in time, all of second grade, I decided to teach her and then 2 other children. And so that kind of like led me into the idea of homeschooling.
Another side effect of COVID is the boom in homeschool education. It was once considered a niche alternative, but it has gained mainstream traction. Across the country, an estimated 2 million students are homeschooled. As parents look for more control over their child's curriculum, the classroom has evolved. When COVID-19 shut down schools, kitchens became classrooms for students all across the Northwest. And for some families, that's still the norm 5 years later. Homeschool education is booming.
We're seeing double the amount of homeschoolers post-pandemic as pre-pandemic.
Mandy Davis is a former grade school principal from Central Oregon and now coaches families around the world about homeschool.
Our world is changing in so many ways, and the system is just not able to keep up.
But this shift is putting a strain on school budgets. Funding is tied to student enrollment numbers. According to the Oregon Department of Education, the state spends $18,440 per student. In Washington, it's just about the same. Those are lost dollars to districts with students who've left. The deficit really started to show in 2022. Oregon's enrollment was down 33,000 students. Today, homeschool registration still remains close to 40% higher than pre-pandemic. Washington is noticing a similar trend, sparking a 43% rise in homeschoolers. For some families, it's brought newfound flexibility.
So I actually really liked homeschool and still like it.
Cairo is a rising 7th grade student. Her mom, Sarah, has been her main educator the past few years.
Before COVID hit, did you ever imagine that you would be a homeschool mom?
Never. No, I really honestly thought that we would just go the traditional route of being in a public school.
Cairo is also an aspiring ballerina and devotes dozens of hours a week to her craft.
What kind of freedom does a homeschool education allow you?
Well, if I really put my mind to it, I can get my work done in less time, which does allow me to go to extra classes for dance.
Flexibility is only part of the equation. The individualized focus adds to it.
So I think more families are taking the reins themselves and bringing education and bringing their children home. The ability that if your child is very advanced in math and ready to move on, they don't have to sit and to the same instruction given to 25 kids.
According to the National Homeschool Education Institute, a student who's home educated scores 15 to 25 percentile points above public school students on standardized tests. Not every state has the same rules and protocols, though, when it comes to a homeschool education.
When you're a homeschool parent, it just really depends on what state you're in and how that state approaches education. I don't see that changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
The guidelines for Oregon homeschool regulations are lenient. Oregon is one of 13 states where parents only have to file one notice of intent to homeschool, not yearly like West Coast neighbors Washington and California. In Oregon, you are not required to follow state academic standards or records of attendance, curriculum, or student work. The only true gauge on performance, standardized tests in 3rd, 5th, 8th, and 10th grades. Washington laws are more strict. Parents must have 45 college credit hours and file an annual declaration of intent to homeschool. A parent must also submit evaluations, like achievement tests. The state also mandates at least 1,000 instructional hours per year covering 11 specific subjects and records.
How much of an impact do you think COVID had on this push towards more homeschoolers?
You know, I've seen both sides of it. I've seen some families that will say, absolutely not. I could never homeschool. We did that during the COVID timeline. And I'm always so quick to remind that emergency school at home is not the same as homeschooling, where you have flexibility and freedom. It's not isolation. At the same time, there are masses of children and families that have realized I can do this. And in fact, I can do this better than the school is doing it.
We reached out to both the Oregon Department of Education and the State Educational Service District Office, which track homeschool data, but they were both unavailable for an interview. Coming up, say goodbye to school-time Snapchat, the statewide cell phone ban about to go into effect at schools all across Oregon, bell to bell. One thing that wasn't on the back-to-school list this year, cell phones. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek issued an executive order mandating all K through 12 public school districts implement a bell-to-bell cell phone ban. The actual ban goes into effect January 1st, but districts have to have a plan in place by November. Multiple studies point to increased learning by eliminating cell phones, but one of the state's largest parent advocacy groups is voicing concern. As kids fill their backpacks going back to school this year, one thing they won't be allowed to take out during the school day, a cell phone.
Not a lot of people want to participate in school, so they just take their phone. It distracts them and other people from their work.
That's one reason Oregon Governor Tina Kotek issued an executive order this summer banning cell phone use in all of Oregon's 197 districts, bell to bell.
I believe that it is in the best interest of our students to put the cell phones aside from bell to bell during the classroom day.
The governor says it affects performance in class, mental health issues, and safety in schools. Neuroscientist Jared Horvath agrees.
This is the lowest hanging fruit we have. If you want to improve learning, get rid of those phones.
Studies show when students are free from their phones for an entire school day, that means no phones in the hallways or cafeteria, test scores go up, behavior improves, and teachers feel more accomplished.
I think it's good because it helps us learn easier, because I think last year I struggled with this is just me myself. I struggle with being on my phone in class.
So it's only in schools with a hard ban that say from bell to bell, either no cell phone on campus, if we see it, it's ours, or you put it in a pouch at the beginning of the day, you can get it at the end. Those are the only time you see learning gains, social gains, all the good stuff.
Many districts are already prepared. Portland, Lake Oswego, and Salem-Keizer are among 12 currently enforcing an off and away policy.
I think it needs to be exceptionally clear. They are unacceptable during school hours, period. No reason.
Prior to the governor's executive order, legislators discussed a similar bill that failed to pass. State Senator Lisa Reynolds was a chief sponsor.
We have seen that when schools go phone free, academic performance goes up, attendance goes up, bullying goes down, and overall mental health improves.
It passed the House but failed in the Senate. Some lawmakers heard from districts worried about the lack of control. The governor's order solves that by leaving the execution of each policy up to the district.
We know we've seen the locked pouches, we've seen little shoe cubbies that teachers will have the kids put the phones in. You decide what works best for your community.
So the bell to bell is nerve-wracking to me as a parent.
Oregon PTA President Lisa Kenzel agrees on cell phone access limitation in school, but disagrees with the executive order after failing in the legislature.
Is it okay for the government just to decide without those discussions that that's something that they can place on every student everywhere?
We know this is the right thing to do. My preference was that the legislature would have passed the bill. Lots of things happened in the legislature. I understand that, but I didn't want to wait till next year. And so doing an executive order as soon as I could to send the message for this coming school year that we have to do this was, in my mind, the right way to keep us on track.
While many are encouraged by the move, some students and parents worry about being out of touch in case of an emergency.
I think it's important to be off your phone, but I also think it's important to be able to have that communication if you need it.
So some of the conversations that were still being had were, what if my child works outside of school and there's a schedule change or there's a last minute need for somebody, what then? How are they supposed to be in communication, especially when we do have so many students right now that are helping families to just survive?
Then there's the financial commitment. A Yonder pouch, which is a tool already in use in some schools, alone can cost between $25 and $30 a student. The governor's order does not provide additional funding. Districts will have to develop new policies with existing budgets. And what will enforcement look like? Schools can't initiate punitive loss of instructional time, like suspension or expulsion.
Is there an answer that maybe the PTA would be happy with?
I think leaving these decisions in the district's hands so that they can talk to their families and their communities and really figure out what works in each place. It's going to be so different from Florence to Gresham to Eugene. I mean, it's to have just the same order all the way across the state. It doesn't feel good.
Every single school that I've worked with, maybe they exist, I just haven't seen them. Everyone that bans them, parents love it, teachers love it, kids love it. Kids go, thank you.
Districts, again, must finalize their policy by October 31st and fully implement it by January 1st, 2026. Most school districts in Washington state are also planning to restrict cell phones in the school this school year. Still to come, the role of AI in the classroom, how some schools are embracing the technology and adapting it to their curriculum. AI is rapidly changing our world, including how your child learns at school. Teachers and districts are now faced with how to use it and whether to even allow it. While Portland Public Schools is in the process of developing policies, one small nearby school district is leading the way with teaching students how and when to use AI in the classroom. Carroll's Elementary in Kelso, Washington may be on a country road, but inside Mrs. Bream's classroom,
we're going to keep our Chromebooks closed.
Students are embracing the technological future of education.
All right, Cougars.
Her 4th and 5th grade combined class regularly uses artificial intelligence while learning.
So today, we're going to try out a tool, an AI tool that's going to help give you some book recommendations.
The day we visited, she taught her students how to use it for book suggestions.
So at this age, it's really just trying to introduce them to the idea of AI. You know, in the past, I was actually a little bit more hesitant to bring AI into the classroom, but I realized that this is their future.
Both Washington and Oregon Departments of Education have released guidance on how to use AI in the classroom, but many districts are still shy to introduce it. Kelso, however, a district with just 5,000 students, is leaning into the new tool. Brenda Sargent helped lead the AI Advisory Committee.
How does Kelso compare to other districts in Washington?
When we've been at conferences, I think we're a few steps ahead as far as putting this in front of the students. We presented some AI guidelines to our students. They actually, all of our 6th through 12th grade students received the same presentation and had to review our guidelines and sign off on them so that we had a guarantee that they understood, that there was no, oh, I didn't know I couldn't use this, that we actually put that in front of all the students. I don't think a lot of districts are there yet.
While the technology is introduced in elementary school, it's more common for middle and high schoolers. Principal Lacey DeWert says it's important to keep up with technology.
We knew our kids were already using it. That was a given, which is why we recognized we had to get our staff some tools and some training to be able to use it within their classroom.
The district has a sliding scale for teachers to decide how much AI should be allowed for each assignment.
Is there a propensity to cheat with AI?
It does happen. And what we recommend to our teachers is know your students writing, get a baseline. Because if there's a student who's writing at a certain level and all of a sudden they turn in an assignment that is leaps and bounds above that, then it's time for a conversation.
If the student does use artificial intelligence, they must cite it as a reference. While Kelso accepts AI in class, other districts simply block sites on school-issued devices.
We used to block it, and then in October of last fall, we made the decision as the advisory team to unblock it. And it was an equity issue. We recognize kids have devices at home, and to say it's blocked on a school device, but if I have a personal device I can use it, that didn't feel right to us.
Teachers can choose to block it in the classroom.
That's up to the teacher. And so that's where they would say 0. You know, we are not using AI at all. They've set that expectation ahead of time. And then the students know that this is work they create themselves.
DeWert believes teaching students how to use AI responsibly will help them later in life.
They're going to go into a workforce that we have never experienced. And so we know they're going to have to use this, and they're already using it. And so now it's like, hey, you could use this platform for this tool. You could use this platform for that tool, and exposing to that before they leave us so that they're ready to go and gain employment.
And they're learning how to use AI as a tool instead of a crutch.
We don't want to, I guess, give it too much power, you know, beyond us as the human element. But I think for me, the way I think of it as a teacher and the way I encourage students to think of it, it's more like a thought partner, right?
That does it for this special edition of K2 News. Thanks for joining us as we examine challenges and opportunities facing schools 5 years after the start of the pandemic. We'll continue to follow the issues facing Oregon and Southwest Washington schools.